Hello, I'm Andrew Hara, the host of the Bomb Squad. I wanted to tell you about my movies. All are available on Tubi, which is a free streaming service. The last one is a zombie drama about how a pandemic and isolation could drive a group of people mad. When the virus hits, John finds himself alone and scared until he meets Michael, his protector. But when Karina, another survivor, enters the mix, everything that John and Michael knew will be turned on its head. The last one's is a zombie virus movie that's somehow even more relevant today. Plus, it has zombies. Check it out. Borderland is a mexploitation film about living in El Paso. When Sarah finds herself in debt to the cartels, she has until sunrise to find some missing monies with the help of her executioner. Borderland is a true midnight movie and a lot of fun. Finally, the documentary Humble Spirits tells the story of the Hahn family, including champion Jennifer Hahn from El Paso, Texas. The entire Hahn family has grown up in the combat sports and has helped shape who they are both in and out of the ring. Humble Spirits, A Family of Fighters, is the perfect documentary for boxing fans of all ages. Check out Tubi to watch all my films. Finally, The Empty Space, winner of multiple awards, including the Sacramento Horror Film Festival's Best of the Best, is a cosmic horror about Amy Andrews, who's dealing with anxiety and depression after a violent attack that killed her husband. As she tries to find herself, she starts to lose her grasp on reality. Or could it be something much more sinister? The Empty Space is full of twists and turns, with Grace DeWilder of Rue Morgue magazine calling it a powerful film full of excellent performances by practically every cast member. All of Andrew Hada's movies are available to rent or buy on streaming services such as Tubi, Amazon, and many other places. We hope that you help support us by watching these films. Now, let's start the Bomb Squad. What's up, guys? Welcome to our first live episode of the Bomb Squad. We're here in Portland in person. I'm in person in Portland. And we're covering today's movie, which is Last Action Hero. It's been a while.
This is a high school production level.
Yeah.
Fucking preparation.
Well, I know what you're saying. Hey, it looks pretty nice when I watch the Bomb Squad. Well, guess what? Not today.
This looks nice, right?
So, yeah. Check it out. We're in an Airbnb.
Yeah. We're in a basement Airbnb.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
Last Action Hero is from 1993, which was famously a bad movie. It was directed by John McTiernan. It stars Arnold Schwarzenegger. It stars Charles Dance from Game of Thrones. It stars F. Murray Abraham. It stars Anthony Quinn in his final role. Probably a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it stars the lovely Bridget Wilson from Mortal Kombat fame.
Oh, and
Danny
Sir
DeVito.
Ian McKellen.
Oh.
Also a ton of cameos. This movie, famously did terrible and kind of tanked. This one and Batman and Robin kind of tanked Arnold's career. And so we're going to talk about it. Josh, why don't you tell us what this movie is about? Actually, William, tell us what this movie's about.
Yeah.
Okay. It's about a kid who lives in, taxi driver level of violence in New York, where he gets robbed in his own apartment, just all this bullshit, but he always goes to the movie theater. It's like this old classic theater. And this friendly old man invites him for a midnight screening to see his favorite action film, which is an Arnold Schwarzenegger actioner, and he uses a magic ticket. And once he goes to watch the film, he gets sucked into an action-adventure thrill ride of a lifetime, really. Yeah. He lives a movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Every kid's dream.
Right.
But especially this kid's dream because his real life is bleak.
Yeah, and essentially it became like this kind of... It's a satire of that kind of action films and stuff like that.
Yeah, the tropes.
What did you think of this movie, guys? And this was... Well, was I the only person who had seen this film?
I had seen it once when I was a little kid.
I know, I'd never seen it.
Yeah.
It was good. It was, it is one of those movies where you're like, okay, I can kind of see why, this didn't work. But it's you could see the ideas it's expressing. You're like, oh yeah, a bunch of movies have kind of taken this and been like, oh, look at this clever observations. Last Action Hero did it first.
Yeah, it's super meta kind of stuff. It doesn't even, it kind of breaks the fourth wall, but the wall is so dimensional in this movie that it's hard to say it broke the fourth wall.
Right.
It's just there's I don't know Can we talk about the Stallone stuff at all?
Yeah.
Like there's a scene where he goes to a Blockbuster and he's like trying to prove. So the kid gets to Movie Land and Arnold Schwarzenegger plays this like crazy cop. And he's like, "Who are you, kid?" And he's like, "You're a movie star. You're in a movie." And Arnold's like, "This is just my life." So the kid's like trying to prove to Arnold that they're in a movie. So they go to a Blockbuster and they find this cutout for Terminator 2. But instead of Arnold, it's Sylvester Stallone. And so Arnold, as cop character, is like, "Oh yeah, Stallone. He's such a good action hero." And it's just like the movie's just like full of like that kind of stuff. Like,
Yeah.
what it would actually be like to live in this like weird
And
action movie version of life.
to me, that's like the most interesting stuff. Like that Stallone joke is really good.
Mm-hmm.
There's like at the very beginning, they're watching the movie version. He plays John Slater in the movie, which is a very Jack Slater.
Yeah,
and it's a very like action movie name. But like he's doing a hostage negotiation, and then like Tina Turner comes out as like the mayor, like to kind of satirize, like, oh, this is like the high profile celeb guest cameo.
Right,
yeah.
And so that stuff is interesting, but I think my biggest problem with the movie is that you're thinking of movies from the 80s, but like you compare this movie to Commando, and Commando is more insane than Last Action Hero.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, so it's like you guys are making this satire to be like, look at how crazy action movies are, but you're not even as crazy as the action movies at the time, you know?
Right.
Like Demolition Man comes out like the same year, and they're literally shooting laser guns at each other and like freezing.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I mean, it's good, but like, it's like, why are you holding yourself back from this premise? And like, there's like one of my favorite things is they walk into the police station once they're in the movie world, and like there's like the chief, and he's giving everyone their partners, and it's like everyone has a mixed match partner.
Yeah. For a buddy cop.
Yeah, for like a
Silly
buddy cop
scenario.
scenario. But like, and that's smart. But then it's like they don't really go far enough.
Yeah,
to, like,
it is surface level, but it is very like he's like, oh, why do you think why do you think every woman you see looks like a model here? He's like, because we're in Los Angeles. It's just like, that's true on both levels. It's more a wry observation.
Yeah.
Than like a banger comedy,
Yeah, it's like the scary movie stuff that happened, like the superhero movie and like those kind of things where it's like they reference something, but it doesn't really ever turn into like a full joke. It's
right.
Here's a thing that's like kind of tongue in cheek, but it's the punchline is that it exists, not actually saying anything about it. Although, like, not all, like, there's a chase scene where the kid first gets into the movie, and like all these cars are just like flying off of ledges, and it's like this like weird like kinetic ballet almost of like parody of action. That stuff like really worked, but then they just like kind of try and throw all the darts at the wall, and it kind of not very few of them hit.
Yeah, and I wonder like who the film, because like at the very beginning, it's like clearly kind of a kids film with the jokes, and it's pretty silly. But at the same time, like it starts and like the kid's like by himself with his mom, and like he lives alone. He has no friends.
Yeah.
And then he gets like some guy breaks into his house and handcuffs him and like says, "Oh, I'll give you my knife so you can stab me." And it's like, is this a family film? Like, what the heck? Why
like
is this so dark?
Yeah, it's like fucked up.
And then once he gets across, like Jack Slater's backstory is that like a serial killer killed his son 3 years ago, and it's like. When you're making a movie for families, like maybe don't kill children in the first.
Right.
Well, that's because they almost kind of address it later once Jack Slater has accepted that he's like a movie character, when he's like, oh my god, it's all true. He's like, wait, so I only exist to have like a dead son. Like he's like, why would you like do this to someone? I'm like, damn, that's like interesting conceptually, but it's not like that's not what the movie's about. They just kind of like brush past it. But you're like. That is like a compelling idea.
And And it's hard because like the Jack Slater movie is cool. Like I wouldn't even mind watching that movie.
Yeah.
But because this movie is a mix of like them being in the real world and the fake world, we spend way too much on the Jack Slater storyline where it's like, why are we still with the drug dealer when we're the kid's trying to get home? You know, like.
Yeah.
It should have almost been like they stopped the drug dealer right away and they're no longer part of the story.
Right. And the kid's like not that worried about getting home at all. Like the fact that there's like dimensional shifts, like it's just inconsequential almost.
He's
like,
rolling with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like they don't even like go at like there could have been a point in time where like Arnold was like, "Kid, we need to get you back home. Like this is not your real life," or something like that. And,
right.
Like, maybe try and like figure out why the kid doesn't want to go home, and also like Arnold like lost his son, and so there's like no like father son stuff that you kind of think is gonna happen,
right?
And so it just kind of feels like too, I don't know, like two different scripts, kind of like
Yeah,
put together.
almost two tones
Yeah,
put together.
Well,
It's
yeah.
hard to know like what they were going for.
And I think that brings up an even better point, William, is that like there all the recipes there. Like it should have almost
Yeah.
been this story about how Slater, even though he's a fictional character, kind of like learns to live again after his son died, and also that kid kind of realizing that like you need a human connection. Like it's more than
totally.
just going to watch movies or whatever.
hmm
But none of those things like
Right.
the fact that
right.
he lost a son and this guy's like kind of his pseudo son doesn't really like play into each other, like not in like an Aliens way, not even
Yeah.
in like a
Yeah.
Logan way, like not at all.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, so why even put this in here?
hmm
And then like, but that's the thing is that the little touches really help. It's just that like the big touches, there's no broad stroke.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
It's more like you appreciate, like, oh, I like the way they did this.
Yeah.
Even though you're
Mhm.
like, but also this entire 20-minute sequence should be cut.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
Although I will say, if this movie had been released today, we would already be on the third one, and it would have Wolverine, like this satire without any bites.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's just that kind of thing where, like, back in the 90s, which I know that we're always constantly talking about movies being better, but it's more so that, like, you needed more than just references, and that's all this movie is. But also, I think, like, there's a lot of movies today that are just references, so I wonder how.
Right.
would've
It
gone.
doesn't seem that different. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's,
Like doing like this high of a parody, like this high level of
Yeah.
parody is like, I don't know. Yeah, they weren't committed enough to. I don't think they even really knew what the joke was. Like I don't
Yes.
think there wasn't like one specific joke. They were just kind of like action movie. But it's like, is
Right,
it Die
right.
Hard? Is like, are we doing like only McTiernan stuff, or like, is it kind of like Demolition Man? Like, should there have been a guy with like a laser gun jumping out of a building at some point?
you can almost see that because what Shane Black was one of the writers on this. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
It was very
right.
like you could almost see like, oh yeah, he's kind of made this mistake in other movies, you know, where you're like
Like not going
Yeah.
full force.
yeah,
on
like
something.
Well,
the
and-
tone doesn't like quite keep. Yeah.
The funny thing about Shane Black is that he's really good at satiring things if he cares. Like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Oh yeah.
You can tell how much he likes old detective stories because that's all that is.
right.
But like this one and The Predator, it's like he knows the surface levels of those franchises, but he doesn't really care about them that much.
Right.
So like
Yeah.
once you get past the surface level, it's like, well, what else is there?
Yeah.
And it is interesting, like, because you have McTiernan who did make a bunch of stuff, but he didn't really make like the Commandos.
Yeah.
His
were
stuff
a
was
little bit
always more grounded. Yeah. So it's weird to pick him. It'd be like today if you're gonna make this movie and instead of picking Michael Bay,
Yeah.
you picked like the Coen Brothers. It's like, well, yeah, they do make action.
Right.
Yeah. It's like that's the tonally. Yeah. No. It's,
Yeah. I heard someone talking about once, like, about this movie, because it is kind of like parodying, like, this, like, the big grandioseness of, like, the 80s, and, like, in the 90s, everything was kind of, like, trying to shift down a little bit more, and,
Mhm.
like, kind of like how, like, hair metal became grunge. And somebody was talking about how Arnold was, like, really, he tried to be really smart, and he's like, if someone's going to make fun of, like, these big action movies that I've been a part of, why shouldn't it be me?
Right, right.
That,
So in
yeah,
a
that
way,
makes sense.
Well,
so,
and
like, changed his, like, career trajectory in a way.
I will say that like there is a sequence in here that like kind of makes fun of how Hollywood would adapt Hamlet, and that's like the best sequence in the entire film.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
With
Yes.
Arnold, yeah.
You almost see I needed like more of that, and that is the weird thing about this movie because like kind of like you said, they spend so much time on the actual like fake movie drug lord like investigation that at the end of it, I guess spoilers, the hitman with a glass eye,
Yeah.
who's super suave. He figures out that he can use the magic ticket to get to
Mhm.
the real world, and
Yeah.
then you're like, wait a second, is there still like 30 minutes left? We've spent
Right,
so
right.
much time. And what his plan is like, he's like, I'm gonna get every movie villain and Hitler to join me.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Which
And-
is feels like a different movie I'm
It's-
describing. And
I
you're
think
like,
it's like
that's
incomprehensible.
And
yeah.
see,
It's
like,
just like what is going on?
it almost would have like it should have been like the first act, you know, or like up until the fun and games are in the world,
Mm-hmm.
and then they come out here and maybe he does bring a bunch of monsters, like maybe not Hitler, of course, but like maybe a bunch of bad guys, like famous bad guys,
Right.
even from
Yeah,
Warner
yeah,
Brothers. I bring out the Joker, bring out like Death
Right.
comes out, and this way you're kind of playing with both ideas, but instead
Mhm.
it's like you should have just either kept it in the monster world or like the action movie world or taken it out. But like the fact that they switch halfway through
right.
and then there's another almost whole movie
Yeah.
to be done in the real world, it's like because then he has to do all the like oh, he meets the mom, and he does like he's in a
Right.
the Thor like, oh, he's out of his element, and
Yeah.
but it's
right,
like
right.
we've already been having fun for 2 hours. I don't need another 30 minutes of this.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. And
But-
like, there's like a part towards the beginning where like the Tywin Lannister, what's his name?
Charles Dance.
Yeah, he's like the main assassin, and he's kind of like the main antagonist in the movie. And he hears the little kid talking about like this other world, like he somehow knows all this information that he shouldn't because he saw it in a movie that's about this assassin, like things he shouldn't know as just a regular kid. And it's like you kind of like these little droplets are kind of like sprinkled throughout the beginning of the
Right.
movie, but they never really like they should have like started going towards like the assassin like only wanting to go for this kid. Like they should have wanted to get this
Yeah,
kid because
yeah.
he has this special knowledge that no one has. But instead, they just kind of brush past it, like we were saying. And so like, they
Yeah.
never like latch on to like the special things that this movie was trying to like get going.
Yeah, yeah. And also like the kid never really has a reason to go home. Even at the end, he's like, "Oh, I want to stay here," but it's like there needed to be something for him to like latch onto at
Or
that
like
time.
he realizes.
And then like and there is like his mom is there, but
Yeah.
because of the way it's framed, it's almost like, oh, so he doesn't care about his mom.
Right.
Exactly, yeah.
It's-
She obviously cares about him, but
Yeah.
they don't ever give him like that connection
You
of
can,
like, my mom.
you can almost see too, like the like, because Arnold's daughter in the movie,
Mhm.
it's like, oh, she's like a new character for the movie,
Mhm.
and you can almost be like, oh, that's his new reason to like live when his son dies at the end. But she's barely in it. Like
Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
in like 3 scenes. And you're like, oh, it's kind of weird because you'd almost think she'd be kind of an integral part of this,
Right,
You
right.
know,
She's just like hyper independent, just doing
yeah.
her own thing.
it's
the whole
very
time.
dropped, yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think what would have been a cool scene is if he had gone to his house in the action movie world and like seen his mom, but now she's like played by a model and she doesn't really know who he is, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
And that would
Yeah.
have been like, oh, I'm gonna miss my mom. Like I
Yeah.
need to go
Yeah.
back home. Or like even like meet the movie guy. Maybe
Mhm.
in this world he's like super jacked, even though he's like old, you know?
yeah,
And it would have like there had to be something where he realizes that the movie world will never compete with the real world, and the stuff he
Right.
loves is over there. But Arnold almost has to tell him like go away,
Yeah.
go back.
Yeah.
He has to do the Harry and the Hendersons like we don't want you anymore.
Yeah. It could have easily been like a Coraline story for sure in that way,
Yeah.
where it's like unsettling. Like,
yeah,
it's,
yeah. Like
no longer
eventually he
here.
realizes, yeah,
Right,
you know, but
right.
it
Yeah,
just never quite hits the mark.
Yeah.
it doesn't. But there,
But
like,
it is
this-
charming though. I
Yeah.
don't know. There's it's something to it. You're like, oh yeah, this is kind of like the heyday of
right.
just
Yeah.
these tropes
Well,
were so big.
and-
you know?
Extremely watchable.
And then it's like so you have Charles Dance who plays like a hitman who has like a glass eye that he changes sometimes but for really no
He'll
we
reason.
don't know what the
he'll
effects
change
are
to
of the
set the
different
mood.
eyes.
He'll,
Yeah, they
to-
don't have any abilities.
It's his vibes. That
Yeah, I
way.
thought
Yeah.
at first because his first one was like a bullseye, so I thought like, oh, he has like a special targeting in his eye.
Because he shoots a guy from like 100 yards away right in the head,
Yeah.
so it has an effect.
But then
We
you're
don't
like,
know.
oh, but no, he's just a real good shot. Basically.
Yeah, yeah.
Because he never uses his eye for anything else.
Mm-mm.
Right. He'll
Doesn't
just be
see
like,
through
look, I have a
walls.
reptile eye
But-
in this scene.
Right.
But then on top
Right.
of that, you have Anthony Quinn, who's playing the drug dealer that the guy works for. You have the axe wielding psycho killer who killed the old
Yeah.
the
Killed his
son. And so
son.
it's like, why is there so many characters in this very simple story?
Right,
Like,
right,
why are
right.
we overcomplicating? Did Zack Snyder write this? Because there's like
I
so
know.
much lore.
You only need one villain in
Yeah,
a fucking action movie.
and it should have just been like, oh, maybe that serial killer gets out and like
Yeah.
he's like chasing them or something. But yeah, just and again, like because you're trying to connect it to the kid who like Slater's kid who died, or you at least hope like that's why they put that in there.
yeah.
Then bring the serial killer out, the one who killed them, so that you can keep like kind of playing with this idea.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
they kind of half do it, but it's like they do it enough to really like, oh man, that's like a huge like last 20 minutes of the movie, but you're also like not really enough to like this should have either been bigger
Yeah,
or cut.
or smaller.
Like,
Exactly.
it's-
Yeah. I didn't hate that main villain enough. Like,
Yeah.
You hate fucking
The axe guy.
Well, you hate the assassin more. Like
Right.
you're more scared of the axe guy, but like he's like in the first half of the movie for like 5 minutes whenever Arnold's kid dies,
Right.
which sucks. But it's like we don't really know the kid, we don't really know Arnold, so it's like you don't really hate the like the mutant gross guy, the
Yeah.
actual
Yeah.
guy. And then when he comes back at the end, you're like, oh, something scary, but you still don't really hate him. I
Yeah.
mean, you know what I
I
mean?
mean, it's like,
yeah,
all right, yeah.
yeah. It's like they've like built him up enough to be that scary. It's just
Right,
like, well,
right.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think like again, they could have just made that joke where they bring back the axe guy, and then the kid could have been like, "Oh, they're recycling the villains again. I thought he died." And then they're
Yeah.
like, they could have made like, oh, well, he actually fell in a vat of water because like that's what
Right.
happened.
Like he
Yeah,
has
yeah,
one
yeah.
scar on his face
Yeah.
or something. Yeah.
And so like, why introduce a whole new plot when like we have to learn about the kids' world,
Mm-hmm.
we have to learn about the action movie world, then we have to learn about this new plot thread from the new movie, and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
guys, what is this movie about and who is it for?
Right.
Yeah, it is weird, but it is a kind of a cool window of like, oh, it's parodying action movie tropes that almost don't really exist anymore because like the
Yeah.
action like genre is like different, so it's almost
different
like
now.
Right.
Yeah.
interesting to see like, oh yeah, they're like making fun of this like relic of a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's like, I mean, it's a lot of fun. It is way too long for what it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, having a kids movie that's like over 2 hours is insane.
Yeah. This was definitely a major 2.5.
Yeah.
This was.
And I can also see like why it didn't do that good because it's like our brains now are so irony poisoned that like unless you show
Yeah.
something while also like winking at the camera, like it always has to be like, oh, that was tough. Like
Yeah.
people don't like it. And now it's like all of our media is like that. But back then, I
right,
think audiences wanted more than
Yeah.
just winks at the audience, you know?
Yeah.
right.
They were the first winks. They weren't
Yeah.
really sure how to wink yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And now it's like
They didn't know Deadpool was just coming around
I
the
know.
bend. to
Yeah.
And now I want to
kill
put
it to death.
Hollywood in that Clockwork Orange machine where they can't wink ever, and they're like,
Yeah.
okay.
No more quips.
Show me some real emotions, please.
But and I think like it's kind of funny because of how like every kind of action star has this. You know, you have Will Smith with Wild Wild West. You have this one and like or Batman and Robin with Arnold. You have Stopper My Mom Will Shoot with Stallone, where like they're stars rising and they do that one flop and they can't ever
You just see it
get back.
steadily, yeah, kind of.
Yeah. So fickle.
Yeah, but it's interesting to see Arnold's like the cool thing about Arnold has always been even this movie. It's like you think of the Stallone movies or you think about action movies from the 80s and they're all like, oh, it's just a big buff guy fighting. But Arnold was never really about that. Like his movies, while they were buff guys fighting,
Yeah.
there was like you think of Terminator, you think of Total Recall, even Conan. They're very different than like the standard
Yeah,
shoot 'em
totally.
up. And even this one, I mean, it's like for the biggest action star in the world to make a spoof of
Yeah.
action of the movies he's been making
Yeah.
is an
It's a
incredible
cool idea.
risk. Yeah. It's super cool. It's just that like it just doesn't come together in the way you want.
Right. They weren't. Yeah. They didn't like wink hard enough at themselves or
Yeah.
something. I don't know. There's just something missing.
Yeah.
But the action scenes that do happen are like badass. Like,
Yeah.
It's like
Oh,
when
yeah, like
something
the
crazy is happening
funeral.
on screen, you
Yeah.
can't look away. You're just like, damn, this is cool.
Yeah, you're like, this is good. This
And-
is well done.
Yeah.
See, and then it almost becomes that other thing where it's like there was multiple times in this where I was like, I kind of wish I was just watching the Jack Slater movie and not.
I
Yeah,
know, just like
yeah,
because even like they do like a lot of like the practical effects and stuff
Mhm.
here and there. You're like, oh yeah, they don't even do this anymore.
Yeah.
And like I think that almost to me it would have been better if the whole movie was just a Jack Slater movie, and then they could have still had those winks to the audience, kind of
Yeah.
like it's a mix of both without like involving a kid who gets
It's like,
almost
uh,
stabbed.
Like shoot 'em up, but kind of like
Yeah,
where it's like,
exactly.
oh, they just live in this and they're kind of half aware it's
Right,
absurd.
right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. It's kind of the shoot 'em up of the '90s, which
Yeah.
also was a huge flop, I believe.
Well,
I
shoot 'em up
was, yeah.
committed more, and I think like that's
Yeah.
the thing. I think that ends up being the problem is that you would have to commit all the way if you did it that way,
Mm-hmm.
and there was surprisingly a lot of scaredness in moving forward, like
Yeah.
in really connecting the two stories and like
Mhm.
having them move, or even just like it seems like all surface level critiques of the genre without any like they're almost like if you're gonna do this, there should have been a scene where the kid gets really hurt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you needed the kid to find out that movies aren't real, you know?
Yes. 100%.
And so because they don't want to do that, it kind of becomes this like
It's-
you're neutered, but then like
It's,
sometimes, but not other times. You
Yeah.
know?
Right.
Like the kid, he never learns a lesson. He's more just like, oh, it was a crazy couple days I had.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of like Pixar level stakes, but like in a fucking crazy ass action movie. And
Right.
It's like doesn't really work that well.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, I think overall I would recommend it, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's like a cool movie to watch for sure.
it's a nice time capsule of a
Yeah.
of a thing that has been
Yeah.
kind of been forgotten. So
Yeah,
They
I think,
really swung for the fences. And
Yeah.
it's fun to watch that happen.
and it's also kind of fun to kind of see like, kind of look at it yourself. I would say if you guys watch it or if you've watched it, maybe put in the comments why you think the movie didn't do that good. You know?
Yeah, and it's definitely not a crash and burn. It's just a weird coast.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of how I describe it.
But so yeah, I think that was a good one.
An interesting failure.
An interesting failure. That's the whole purpose of our podcast.
We're all interesting failures.
But yeah, I think it's worth watching. And also we're gonna have a couple more live episodes, so keep your eye out for that. And we'll see you guys on our first live action episode of the Bomb Squad.